Family businesses are built on trust. That's not a sentiment, it's an operational fact. When a family runs a business, they skip the controls that larger companies take for granted. Why would you audit your brother? Why would you require receipts from your son? Why would you install cameras in the kitchen when the person running it has been family for 23 years? That trust is real. And sometimes, someone decides to use it. My name is Daniel Rowe, and this case was different from the ones before it. Not because the crime was more sophisticated. It wasn't. It was actually one of the oldest schemes in the book. It was different because the victim was going to be someone's father. The call came on a Friday evening. A woman's voice. Controlled, but only just. The kind of control that comes from having rehearsed what you want to say and then watching it fall apart the moment someone actually answers. My name is Catherine Aldwell. My father owns a restaurant group, 3 locations, all in the city. He started the first one 31 years ago. I'm listening. For the last 18 months, the business has been growing. New clients, bigger events, more covers every week. My father added a private dining room at the main location last year. He hired 2 more staff. He expanded the catering side. Revenue was up almost 40%. But profit hasn't moved. Not a dollar. Revenue goes up, costs go up by exactly the same amount. Every single month, for 18 months. I let that sit. Revenue growing 40% over 18 months with 0 profit improvement doesn't happen by accident. Markets don't work that cleanly. Costs don't scale that perfectly in lockstep with revenue unless someone is making sure they do. Has your father looked at the numbers? He looks at them every month. His operations manager prepares the reports, a man named Ray Kovacs. He's been with my father for 11 years. My father trusts him completely. More than he trusts me, honestly. Does your father know you're calling me? No, he would never agree to it. He'd say I was being paranoid, that Ray would never do anything to hurt the business, that family is family. Is Ray family? My father treats him like he is. There it was. The oldest vulnerability in a family business, not blood, but the people who've been treated like blood. Who've learned the rhythms and the blind spots and the specific quality of trust that comes from a man who started with nothing and built something and decided that loyalty deserves loyalty back. Tell me about the restaurants. How do they operate day to day? The main location is on Mercer Street. Italian food, mid to high end. My father runs it himself most evenings. The other 2 are smaller. One does lunch, one is more of a catering kitchen. Ray manages the operations across all 3. Staffing, suppliers, maintenance, the books. My father cooks. Ray runs everything else. That's structure. 1 person in the kitchen, 1 person running everything else. No overlap, no redundancy, no second set of eyes on anything Ray touched. I told Catherine I need a way in. She told me Ray had been saying for months they needed someone to help digitize their inventory system, an old manual process that had never been updated. Ray had mentioned it to her father. Her father had agreed it was overdue. Nothing had been done about it yet. I told her to make it happen. A freelance operations consultant hired to modernize their stock management system. Access to all 3 locations, access to the books, a reason to be everywhere and ask everything. I told her one more thing. Whatever I find, you need to be prepared for it to be someone your father loves. I know. That's why I called you instead of the police. This time my name was Daniel Cole, freelance operations consultant, specializing in small hospitality businesses. Practical, no nonsense, the kind of person who talks about spreadsheets and workflows and makes everyone feel like the boring work is finally getting done. I left the good watch at home, wore a jacket that needed pressing, carried a notebook instead of a laptop. Consultants who show up with notebooks look like they're there to help. Consultants who show up with laptops look like they're there to judge. The main restaurant on Mercer Street was called Aldwell's. Simple name. Dark wood interior, low lighting, 38 covers. The kind of place that's been in the same spot long enough that people stop noticing it's there and start thinking of it as part of the street itself. A neighborhood institution. Frank Aldwell met me at the door at 9 in the morning, 2 hours before lunch service. 61 years old. Broad shoulders, flour on his apron already. The handshake of someone who's been on their feet for 40 years and has no intention of stopping. Daniel, good. Ray told me about the inventory project. Honestly, we've needed this for years. I just never had time to deal with it. That's usually how it goes. The systems that most need fixing are the ones nobody has time to look at. He liked that. He walked me through the kitchen, explained the storage system, showed me the handwritten stock ledgers that dated back 7 years. Beautiful handwriting, he said. His own, he said. Ray had taken it over 2 years ago when the volume got too high. Ray Kovacs arrived at 9:30.
Mid-50s, compact, efficient-looking, the kind of person who is always slightly ahead of the conversation, already answering a question before you finished asking it. He shook my hand, smiled warmly, and in the same motion, handed Frank a supplier invoice that needed a signature. Smooth. The kind of smooth that comes from long practice at being the person who manages the details so the owner doesn't have to. Daniel, welcome. I'll get you set up with the stock records after service. Morning is usually a bit chaotic, best to stay out of the kitchen's way until 11. Of course. Mind if I just watch how the morning runs? Helps me understand the workflow before I start changing anything. Be my guest. So I watched. A restaurant before service is a different world from a restaurant during it. During service, everything is noise and speed and controlled chaos. Before service, it's quiet and methodical, and that's when you see how things actually work. Deliveries came in through the back, 3 that morning, produce, dairy, dry goods. Each delivery was met by a kitchen staff member who checked the items against a printed order sheet. The order sheets were then given to Ray. Ray filed them. Frank never saw them. That was the first thing I noted, not because it was unusual in a small operation where one person handles everything. That's completely normal. But normal is where the vulnerabilities live. A system that works perfectly for honest operations is also a system that works perfectly for dishonest ones. I also watched the cash. Aldwell's did a mixed business. Card payments, yes, but also a significant volume of cash. Lunch was often cash. Private events were sometimes entirely cash. And the catering side, smaller jobs especially, frequently settled in cash because the clients preferred it. Cash is the oldest problem in hospitality. It's physical. It's immediate. And unlike a bank transfer or a card payment, cash doesn't leave a trail unless you build one deliberately. At Aldwell's, the trail was built by Ray. End of every service, the register was counted by a member of floor staff. The count was written on a daily sheet. The daily sheet went to Ray. Ray reconciled it against the POS system and entered the final number into the accounting software. Frank reviewed the monthly summary, never the daily sheets, never the raw register counts. One person, controlling the count, the reconciliation, and the entry, with no independent check at any stage. By end of day 1, I hadn't found anything yet, but I understood the architecture, and the architecture had a door that only one person had a key to. On day 3, Ray gave me access to the full records, stock ledgers going back 4 years, supplier invoices, daily cash sheets, the accounting software with its monthly summaries, everything I needed to build a picture, officially of the inventory flow, unofficially of everything else. I started with the supplier invoices, not because I expected to find something there first, but because it's the right place to start. In hospitality fraud, supplier invoices are where the amateur schemes live. Fictitious suppliers, inflated prices on real ones, duplicate invoices submitted 6 weeks apart, hoping nobody checks the dates. Aldwell suppliers were clean. I cross-referenced prices against market rates for a restaurant of this size and profile. The produce supplier was slightly above average, the dairy goods were normal, the dairy was actually below average. No duplicates, no fictitious names, nothing there. Then I looked at the daily cash sheets, and that's where it started. Not with something wrong, with something too right. Daily cash sheets in a busy restaurant should be messy. Totals that don't round. Small discrepancies between the register count and the POS total. A few dollars over or under. The kind of human error that happens in every cash business in the world. Aldwell's daily sheets were immaculate. 18 months of records, 3 locations, almost 600 individual service periods, and in almost every single one, the register count matched the POS total to the dollar. Not close. Exact. That doesn't happen by accident. That happens when one person controls both numbers and makes sure they match. I went back to the POS system and dug deeper. The point-of-sale terminal logged every transaction, the raw data, not the summary Ray entered into accounting. I pulled 3 months of raw POS logs and compared them to the daily sheets Ray had filed. The card totals match perfectly. Card transactions are hard to alter. The bank records them independently. But the cash totals were different. On the raw POS logs, cash transactions were higher than what appeared on the daily sheets by an average of $340 per service. At first that sounds small. $340. A busy restaurant night. Not a dramatic number. But Aldwell's ran lunch and dinner service, 6 days a week across 3 locations. $340, twice a day, 6 days a week at 3 locations. That's over $12,000 a week, over $50,000 a month, over 18 months, the exact period since the profit had stopped moving. That was approaching $900,000. I sat back in my chair in the small office Ray had set me up at the back of Aldwell's main location. I could hear Frank in the kitchen, the sound of a pan on a burner, someone laughing at something, the ordinary sounds of a place that had been running for 31 years. And somewhere in those sounds, the reason why all that growth had never made it to the bottom line. But I needed more. The POS discrepancy was damning, but Ray could claim it was a software error, a calibration issue, anything technical enough to create reasonable doubt. I needed to find where the money was going, not where it was disappearing from, where it was arriving.
On day 7, I asked Ray if I could shadow him for a full day across all 3 locations. Workflow mapping, I called it, understanding how information moved between sites before I could recommend a system to manage it. He agreed. Of course he did. I was the operations consultant hired to improve his systems. Saying no would have been the strange answer. We started at the catering kitchen at 7 a.m. Ray was efficient, methodical, clearly experienced. He knew every supplier by first name. He knew which staff members needed to be watched and which could be trusted to work unsupervised. He knew the margins on every menu item without looking them up. He was genuinely good at his job. That's the part that's always hardest to reconcile. The people who steal from a business successfully are almost always the people who understand it better than anyone else. You can't exploit a system you don't know inside out. At the catering kitchen, I saw the first piece. A private catering job came in that morning, a corporate lunch order for 40 covers. The client paid on pickup, cash. Ray took the envelope, counted it at the counter, and put it in the lockbox. I watched him write the amount in the day's log. I'd seen the original order confirmation on the system. I'd been giving read access to everything as part of the inventory project. The order was for $1,200. Ray wrote down $900. $300. One transaction, gone, before it even reached the accounting system. I said nothing. I wrote something in my notebook, not what I'd seen, something about stock shelf configuration, and I kept watching. At the second location, lunch service, I watched the register count happen. A young woman named Sophia counted the drawer at close. She wrote down the total on the daily sheet, handed it to Ray, and went back to her side work. Ray reviewed the sheet. Then he opened the register, counted the cash himself. He said he always double-checked, showed me with a smile, just good practice, and then he wrote a new number at the bottom of the sheet. A reconciled total, he called it, adjusting for the POS system's known calibration variance. The calibration variance, a technical-sounding phrase for the gap he'd been creating between what the register actually held and what he told the accounting system it held. And while he recounted, I watched his left hand. A practiced movement, the kind of thing you only see if you're looking for it specifically and you already know what you're watching for. A fold, a slide, bills moving from the stack to his jacket in the same motion as counting them. Smooth. 11 years smooth. That evening, I sat in my car outside Aldwell's main location and wrote everything down. The mechanism was straightforward once you saw it. Cash came in from two sources, the registers during service and cash catering payments on collection. Ray controlled the count on both. He skimmed a portion before logging it, never too much from any single transaction, never a round number that would look deliberate. Then he entered the reduced figure into accounting system. The books balanced perfectly because he was the only one balancing them. And as the business grew, more covers, more catering, more cash moving through the system, his percentage stayed roughly the same, but the absolute amount increased with every new client. Revenue going up, costs going up, profit staying flat, exactly as Catherine had described. The business growth her father had worked so hard for, the new private dining room, the expanded catering, the 2 extra staff members, had translated almost dollar for dollar into Ray Kovacs's pocket. I had the mechanism. I had the POS discrepancy data. I had one direct observation. I needed one more day. On day 9, I installed a small document scanner app on the tablet the office used for filing. Ray had asked me to set it up as part of the digitization project. Among other things, it logged when documents were created and modified. I used it for the inventory work it was meant for, and I set it to also capture the daily cash sheets at the time they were first filled in, before Ray's reconciliation step. Over 3 days, I had the original counts from the floor staff, time-stamped, unaltered, and Ray's reconciled versions. The difference across those 3 days, across all 3 locations, was just over $4,000. That was enough. I met Catherine at a coffee shop on a Tuesday morning. She arrived looking like someone who hasn't slept well in several weeks, which was probably true. I talked for 12 minutes. Ray Kovacs has been skimming cash from all 3 locations for at least 18 months. The mechanism is straightforward. He controls both the initial cash count and the accounting entry. He skims a portion from register takings during service and from cash catering payments on collection. Then he enters a reduced figure into the accounting system, using a false technical variance to explain any discrepancy if anyone questions it. I have 3 days of time-stamped documentation showing the original staff counts versus Ray's reconciled entries. The average daily discrepancy across all locations is consistent with the overall profit gap your father has been experiencing. The total over 18 months is approximately $900,000. Catherine was very still. 900,000. That's the estimate. It could be more. The earlier records are harder to verify precisely because the POS system was different before the upgrade 2 years ago. My father is going to be destroyed. Your father built something real. The damage is financial. The business is still there. The 31 years are still there. What happens next is your decision. Does he have to know it was me who called you? No. The inventory digitization project surfaced anomalies in the cash reconciliation process. That's a true statement. How the investigation proceeded from there is between you and your lawyer. She nodded, looked at the folder I had placed on the table, didn't open it. 11 years. My father used to say Ray was the reason the business could grow, that without Ray managing everything, he'd never been able to open the second location, or the third. That might even be true. She looked at me. Ray is genuinely good at operations. The growth was real, the management was real. He just decided that wasn't enough for what he thought he was owed. How long were you in there? 12 days. Walked back to my car and sat there for a moment. No towers of glass and exposed concrete this time, just a street of restaurants and dry cleaners and a flower shop doing slow morning business. The kind of street that holds a dozen family stories inside every shopfront. The cases that look simple from the outside are the ones that stay with you. A large company loses $150,000 to a ghost vendor scheme. It's a line item, a legal matter, a process improvement. A man spends 31 years building a restaurant, and the person he trusted most takes $900,000 from the thing he built. That's a specific kind of damage that no recovery of funds fully repairs. I thought about that on the drive back, and then I stopped thinking about it, because the thinking about it doesn't change what was true, and what was true was always going to need to be found. 3 weeks later, Catherine sent a message. Ray Kovacs had been confronted with the documentation. He had not denied it. A civil recovery process had begun. And Frank Aldwell, who had been told the inventory audit had uncovered some irregularities in the cash process, had redesigned the entire reconciliation system himself. New controls, independent counts, 2 signatures on every cash entry. In the first month after the changes, profit was up 18%. He'd built something worth stealing from. Turned out he'd also built something worth getting back. Clearline Associates. Case number 3. Closed.